I'll move to Article 2. Shall the Pelham School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between Pelham School District and the Pelham Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits over amount paid in the prior fiscal year at current staffing levels? Year 2019-2020, $493,563. 2020-2021, $495,779. Years 2021-2022, $487,295. 22 and 23, $475,257. And then 2023 and 2024 will be $479,190. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $493,563 for the 2019-2020 fiscal year, said sum representing the additional cost attributed to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement that would be paid at current staffing levels. A majority vote is required, recommended by the school board and by the budget committee, and Candace will be giving an explanation of this.
You can go to the next slide, David. Perfect. So let's start with what the first question is going to be in everybody's mind. What's the tax implication? So if you can see here, the first year of the tax implication is 29 cents per thousand. But I think the more important thing is that our teachers are assets to our students. And so we want to make sure that we're competitive with our neighboring towns, and currently we're not. Can you go to the next slide, David? So the impetus behind this new contract in working with negotiations is that we want to bring teachers' salaries up to be comparative with our neighboring towns. We have, the gap has widened over the last several years in terms of our neighboring towns and what our teachers make. If you look at our first year salary, we're competitive in the first 5 years, and we've become sort of a training ground for teachers. We can get new teachers that want to be in this profession for a long time. But they're here and they get mentored by our seasoned teachers, and then they leave and they go on to other schools. So just as they're starting to get up to speed and becoming really efficient with our students, we're losing them to other schools. And that's not what we want to do. We want to, have homegrown teachers here that stay here and continue to have their professions here for a long time. So we're really focused on the middle experience range in this contract. All of our teachers are important, but as we said, we're competitive in the first 5 years. That middle range is where we start to widen the gap. And so we wanted to kind of focus on that area first. This year alone, between 2018 and 2019, as I mentioned with the mentors, we had 32 mentors that were mentoring 40 new individuals in our school. Let me repeat that. 32 mentors mentoring 40 new individuals in our school. That is really burdensome on our teachers that have been here a long time. And as much as we want our new teachers to have great mentors, and they do, as I mentioned, we're a training ground for a few years, and then we lose those teachers. So we're constantly turning over new teachers, and having our seasoned teachers have to help support those new teachers, which takes away from their ability to be able to be innovative in their teaching with our students, and that's not what we want to have to happen. And they're spending approximately 50 hours doing this, by the way. So that's 50 hours that could be towards instructional learning that they could be spending their time doing, or professional development, rather than having to continue to mentor new teachers. So the next slide here, I'll orient you to it. This is really about where that disparity starts to come in play. So if you look at the top of the graph on the right-hand side, the Bachelor 1 to Bachelor 6, which is what that B1 and B6 represents, that's where we're most competitive, that first 5 years that we get teachers. You can see on the left-hand side represents Pelham and our average salary, and then New Hampshire's average salary. So for a bachelor's first degree, Pelham is at $39,060. New Hampshire average is around $38,274. Where we start to have that gap widen is as we get into teachers that have their master's degree in 6 years, it's almost a 10% less that they're making than they could be in a surrounding town. That's a significant difference, 10% less than what they could be making by simply going one town over. When you look at our teachers with master's degrees that have approximately 13 years of experience, those are the teachers that we want to keep, is that middle group and that higher group, 25% less than what they could be making in a surrounding town. And this didn't happen overnight. This has happened over years and years of that salary continuing to widen the gap. So we have a lot of teachers that have stayed with master's degrees in our school district that have been working for less than competitive wages and have brought really great innovations to our students and provided high academic learning. We owe it to our teachers to make sure that we're trying to be competitive with our surrounding towns. Go to the next slide, David. So this slide just highlights that there's no quick and easy fix. You can see the disparity in terms of what the percentages are. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see that a B13 is about 13% difference in what we pay versus what the New Hampshire average is. And then if you look at the Master's 13, you're talking almost 20% difference, as we highlighted earlier. So we want to make sure that we're trying to close that gap, and this contract alone is not going to get us to closing that gap in a definitive amount, but it does get us closer. When you look at a Master's 13, the example is that will be 6.3% closer than the average salary of where we were. So we know that this is just a small step forward, but it's a step that we must take as a community. Go to the next slide, David. So what are some of the highlights? For those of you that weren't part of the negotiation, I'll give you a quick summary of what we did and where we got to. So we were moving from a 13-step schedule to a 20-step schedule, and the reason for that is that we wanted to be able to offer a more innovative way in terms of how we do our pay scale. Every teacher will receive a 1% pay increase. And then in addition to that 1% pay increase, every teacher will receive an additional increase depending on their placement on that step schedule. So if you look at the schedule in the year 2019 to 2020, if you're a step 1 through 5, you'd get an additional $150. If you're step 6 through 15, you get an additional $1875. If you're step 16 through 20, it's an additional $1750. So you might be asking, okay, why is step 1 through 5 getting $150 and the other two buckets are getting more money? And so the reason for that is, as I mentioned, we're competitive in those first 5 years. Where we're not competitive is when you start getting through step 6 up to 20. And so we're trying to assimilate to that. And I think what's important is that, we have the support of the staff, or we wouldn't be having the CBA agreement that we have. And so we really worked closely with the staff members to make sure that this is what makes sense for now to try and close that gap. If you look at step 21 and above, we have a longevity adjustment. So anybody that's been with us or has 20 more years experience of credible experience and they've had 10 years in Pelham, you get an additional $1,000 for longevity. So the intent behind that is that, again, we're trying to keep our teachers that have been with us and that have performed well and want to stay and continue their career in this district, which is what we want. Next slide, David. So this one talks about the turnover rate. So why did this become so important to us? Well, we sent out a survey last spring to all of our staff members. We wanted to know what was going well, what wasn't going well, and I want to thank everybody for being honest with your feedback because it was really helpful for us to be able to think about where we needed to focus our efforts. And we looked at how many staff members we were losing over the last several years, and we asked why. And for some it was personal reasons, but for a lot of it, it was salary. And so this gives you a flavor of where we've lost staff over the last several years. When you look at fiscal year 15, our ratio increased from 7.2% turnover to last year 15%, almost double our turnover since 2015. If you look at fiscal year 2019, the turnover ratio is 14.3%, and that's just as of December 2018. So if you look at springtime, you'll naturally see an increase will go up as people start to transition out. But I think the key here is you're talking doubling from 2015 from 7.2 to 15%, and now we're looking at 14.3% this year alone. And a teacher who terminates at the end of the school year is accounted in the following year, which is why we have those numbers. But I think the important point here, as I said, we're doubling the amount of teachers that we're losing, and the reason for that is oftentimes because of salary. So we can do something about that as a community. Next slide, David.
I've been asked to talk to the next slide, and it looks like there's a little technical glitch because we do have a graph on the printout, but not on there. One of the questions that was asked is how does a teacher who was off schedule in the current contract move on schedule in the new contract? So our answer was that we're respecting the salaries that the teachers have off schedule at the moment, and they're increasing by a small amount, 1% per year. As the new schedule, assuming it gets approved, as the new schedule takes place, it actually increases the amount at a greater rate than the 1% per year. So at a certain point, the salary in the new schedule will exceed the salary in the off schedule. Again, you can't see the slide, you can't see the graph, but if we go with the languages on the side, if we have a teacher with a bachelor's degrees, approximately 25 years of teaching experience, their current salary is $59,560. That will go up by 1% per year until in fiscal year 22, the new contract amount would surpass that 1% per year. So that's when the teacher would go on to the new schedule. So they lose nothing, they get a modest increase each year, but then when the schedule catches up to them, then they go on that. And so from fiscal year 22, 23, 24, they go on the new schedule and they follow what the schedule is in the new contract. Next one for you. Ken?
So this is the slide you've already signed, but we feel it bears repeating again, so that's why we put it again, so if anyone has questions. But again, there's no quick and easy solution, we know that. This is really just a first stab at trying to get us closer in proximity to where our competitive salaries can be more competitive to our neighboring towns. And so this is the first time we've structured the contract this way. It's an innovative approach to trying to get salaries where they need to be. And I would implore you, when you go to the polls, to make sure that you remember our teachers are our assets. They help our students to achieve their academic goals. And without them, we would not have the success that we've had in Pelham. And we've had a lot of teachers that have stayed here for a long time and have built their careers here, and we want to keep those people here. We'll take any questions if you have them.
Anybody like to speak to Article 2? Mrs. Scanzani?
First thing I do is have a
Please
question.
state your name and your...
Scanzani, Victoria Circle.
Thank you.
How are the tax rate impacts calculated that are in this document?
The tax rate is calculated through dividing the annual assessed value without utilities. For the 2019, the anticipated number, we divide that by 1,000, and then we take the total first year of the contract, the 493,000, and divide that into that denominator.
And what number was used on the bottom divisible number?
So when I talked to the town, I asked for an estimate for 2019, and it's very difficult to assess where the number would be. We discussed it at length, and we agreed that a conservative number would be to take what the prior year's adjustment was to that valuation and apply it again. So that was about 2.7%. There was an explanation that I understood that we are under about 7%, I believe she said, of the actual valuation in town. And so she said that 2.7% would be a very conservative number. So that's how I calculated it.
All right, so let's give you some actual numbers for the taxpayers who care how much this is going to cost them. When you take the $493,000 for the first year impact of this contract against the actual MS1 for which the taxpayer's tax rate is set, approximately every $1.7 million in spending equals $1 on the tax rate. Okay? Now, as far as percentages of conservative and everything else, forget trying to estimate it because you can't. The town is under the responsibility of state statutes to do a townwide reval every 5 years. We do a rolling one as we go, and right now, home values in Pelham are approximately 17% or 14% less than what they need to be in order to get to 100%. But the best number you can use right now is 1.7 million. If you try to estimate the average value of a home in Pelham, and understanding we're using averages here, some homes are less, some homes are more in value, and when you revalue the town, some homes will actually go down in value and some will go up depending on the year and everything else. But if you take the $493,000 over $1.7 million, what you will find is that's almost a $500 increase for the average home that's valued at about $383,000 in town right now. And that's the best number to use, is the number I just gave you, because it's about as accurate as you're going to get. You're going to be close to a $500 increase for each year of this contract going forward.
500 dollar increase on what?
On,
On
for
what
the
size of a
average
home?
taxpayer that has a home valued at $383,000.
So the number that I used, the net assessed valuation for 2018 was $1,714,232.
So
And then
if
with
you
an
divide-
adjustment of the 2.7%, it becomes $1,759,659. So
If
I'm
you
not sure how our
divide
figures are
493 over that number, what percentage is that?
well, I don't have that right in front of me.
Well, again, the tax rate impact, again, you got to look at the tax rate impact and against the average value of a house. So
Right.
if you're going to go up 33, 34 cents per thousand, and understand, it's not on the house value, it's per thousand on the evaluation.
Right,
So
it's 28 cents, 29 cents per thousand.
it's going to be a little higher than that, but the fact of the matter is, at 383,000, when you multiply it out, it's going to be close to $500. Now, that said, I understand what the school board, not only this one, but others, have tried to do relative to teacher contracts. And I understand in the last contract, the goal was to try to get competitive at the lower end of the steps, and that contract accomplished that based on your own comments tonight. The issue is, how do you get to the middle of the contract and try to become more competitive there? And the way that it's done is, if you look at the past contracts, you've had about a $500 increase in each step. Those steps all changed, not just because you added the 6 steps to the bottom of the contract, but because you increased the value of each step to a little over $1,000. Forget the little things of longevity costs and everything else. I don't care about those. What I care about is trying to get to that middle of the contract and giving a much higher percentage in there and then putting us on a larger plane. The worst contract this town tried to pass was almost 35 years ago, and it did not pass at town meeting. This, to me, is the worst contract I've seen to the taxpayers of this town, and it's going to have a long-term effect not only on future contracts in the town, but also in the ability of the town and school district to spend money in the future on other things they need. There's only so much that you can spend money on to be able to get your value for the taxpayers to feel that they're getting that value. And I would have rather seen us reduce the number of steps in the top of the contract to stay competitive, because at the end of this contract, I guarantee, without a doubt in my mind, who's ever sitting here as a member of the school board, and some of you may or may not be here, you're going to say to the voters of this town, this contract is uncompetitive at the low end, because we're not doing much at the low end. We're leaving it alone again, and then we're going to be uncompetitive there. So the better point would have been to increase the value in the steps and slowly go up to get to where you need to do. It would have cost less in the long run, but it would have been a smarter contract, and also give the value back to the voter. The other thing that we've gotten, excuse me, Mr. Moderator, other thing, and the last thing I'll comment on this contract on, has to do with the fact that when the Cadillac tax went away under Obamacare, everybody said, well, we don't have to worry about the voters paying a tax on Cadillac medical plans. So we stopped looking at medical plans and requesting employees to pay a little bit more of a percentage of their medical costs, even though medical costs are still going up. The town, to its benefit, under all of the other town contracts on the municipal side, has asked their employees to pay a small increase each year of the medical costs as they go up. We haven't done that in the school district, and those costs are still going up.
Can you wrap up, Mrs. Canzani?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Gentlemen, Mr. Line, since you're closer, then I'll get you next. Mr. Line.
Outlined, Jeremy Hill Road. I helped set the tax rate. I've done it for more than 20 years, actually almost 30 years throughout my lifetime as a selectman. And the town valuation is about $1.7 billion. Since we do by 1,000, 1.7 million will raise the tax rate $1. Deb's math is correct. Bill's got the right numbers, but the math is faulty. If you take the 500,000, 490 divided by 1.7, you get close to 30 cents. A $400,000 home times 30 cents, it's $120. Her numbers are 116. She's got 29 cents. Now, let me give you, but you cannot predict what's really going to happen to the tax rate. All right? And I'll give you a perfect example. We put an addition onto the high school, $22 million addition. Now, it's 20-year bond. I mean, it's $1.1 million in principal and probably another 1.1 in interest. And the first year that hit the tax rate, that's 2.2 million. More than 4 times this number, the tax rate went up 20 cents. Why did that happen? Well, there's other factors. First of all, I want to commend the school board and the school district for really doing a great job with their budgets. They have generated a lot of revenue. It comes back, offsets the taxes. They're pretty frugal. And the other thing that happens is we have houses in town, they get built every year, and the base goes up. And that's equivalent to maybe probably another $1.5 million that you can afford to spend before you even raise the tax rate. So I think we're in good shape.
Thank you. Thank you. Sir?
Good evening. Troy Brissett, Longview Circle. I was also doing some quick math back there and prior to this evening, and the $100 figure that Mr. Lind is absolutely correct based on the figures provided. So I want to share with you all my appreciation for your hard work on the contract and let you know a little bit about my first-hand experience with the Pelham Elementary School. I've seen teachers in action, and the passion and the dedication really comes forth. And I see that tonight in this overwhelming show of support. So thank you for being here. There's a lot more showing up than we had last night, which is impressive in and of itself. And I just want to voice my support for the teachers. I'm pleased with this contract, and I'm happy to support you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Sir?
Good evening. Doug Vincent from Arlene Drive. Those that know me know I'm a simple guy. And from my perspective, when I look at this, I see a lot of outstanding work, and I'm not smart enough to sort out in the back of the room which math is better. But I do see a great deal of effort and concern not only for today, but for our future. And as a simple guy, I know of no greater investment in our future than our children, and we entrust that to our teachers. I'm embarrassed as a Pelham resident that we've let this gap linger so long. We've got a job to do. We've got to fix this. And I think the conservative approach, in my estimation, that the school board has responsibly undertaken, both for our future but also for our current taxpayers, I think is marvelous. I look forward to seeing more when we can do it right. But I get very emotional when I realize we have been letting this gap dominate this school budget, and we just need to fix it. So I guess I'll just close with that. I see such importance to helping to get this right and to take care of our future. So, thank you.
Thank you. Heather? Take Heather, then I'll take Brian. I said Heather first. That's the first time a woman ever listened to me.
Doug, I know your wife.
You know I'm telling the truth.
Yeah, I do. Heather Ford, Heritage Road. First off, Mr. Geller, thank you for everything you've done. I'm not a numbers person. I'm the last person to stand up here and lecture anyone on the math or the cost of the contract. I am here to talk about the value of the contract and what these teachers bring to our town. I also get a little emotional about this. Being a parent of a special needs student, these teachers have bent over backwards, day in, day out, to accommodate what our kids need, whether it's physical handicaps, social, emotional, anything these kids need. These teachers are the first ones to the line to take care of it. So I stand with you guys.
Thank you. Brian?
Brian Carton, Falcon Drive. I certainly am not as familiar with the numbers as some of the current members on the school board, especially the representative on the budget committee. But Hal Line did teach me a little bit about how tax rates work and how the total valuation of the town works. And all I want to say is, it's not been that long since I've been on the board, and the last time I remember looking at the total valuation, it was about 1.4 billion, a little over that. And if we're over 1.7 billion now, I gotta wonder how we got there. And maybe it has something to do with the improvements and support that we've gotten from the town in the past years, and the way we've seen so many improvements, just not on the school side, but also on the town side. And I'm going to encourage everybody in here to keep it up. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Tom?
After Mary Alice, please.
Good evening. I'm Mary Alice Cookenham, and I'm on Appaloosa Avenue. And I want to thank the board for all the hard work that they've done. They've really put a lot into this, and they're finally coming up with a good bargaining agreement for the teachers. I'm in favor of the teacher raises. The teachers work hard. We do not need to be the last or the fifth to the last or wherever we stand. I remember when we were always the last. It's time to give them a raise. They do a great job. It's not an easy job. It's not like when I went to school and teachers were teachers. It's a lot more difficult. So it's time to step up and to make a decision, and I think that I'm asking the Pelham voters to vote in favor of this budget and to vote for the teachers' raises. They deserve it, and we need to show them that. We also need to hold on to good teachers. We can't continue to lose teachers. They get here, they get trained, and then they go away. So that's not a good policy. It's not good for the students. And we need to be thinking about our students. I've had children go to these schools, and my grandchildren have gone to these schools, and maybe great-grandchildren one day. But this is a time when we have to put education first. I would always speak about that at meetings and say, we are not the first in the world anymore. When I went to school, our schools were the best. We are far from that if you take them all. We're 27 in math, 20-something else in science. We used to be the best. They came here to learn from us, to say, what are you doing? We want to be like America. And we're not doing as well as we need to do because we're not investing in public schools. And I am a big proponent of the public school system. So I'm here to support the teachers. I'm here to ask the Pelham taxpayers, as I am a taxpayer, and I'm a senior, so I'm going to speak to the seniors. It's time for us to step up and vote in favor of the teachers' raises. I also want to take this time to thank Tom Geller for all the hard work he's done. He's done a great job. We're going to miss you, but you can still come to meetings and speak up for things. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Do you want to speak?
I'll let them speak.
Okay.
I can go to the end.
Amber Capone, Crescent Circle. I figured since we were talking numbers, I'd throw out a statistic. So there's been numerous studies showing that the cost of rehiring an employee can range anywhere from the extremely low range of $4,000 all the way up to the high range of half of the salary. So if we look at the first B1 category, that's about $40,000. So you're talking about a range of from $4,000 up to $20,000 to replace an employee. So that includes training, that includes recruiting, includes everything. So when you times that by the 23 terminations that we've had this year alone, we're already at $460,000 on the high end. So when you're talking about $30,000 to retain good teachers that will have a positive impact on our students, I think that it's worth it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Tom?
I am a numbers guy. I am a math person. So when I hear the numbers like that, I take a look and I see whether it makes sense. And just the basics, 500,000 divided by 1.7 is under 30%. We didn't come by this amount. We didn't come by this contract easily. We are looking at a concern of ours. A concern of ours that's been building over a number of years. We've recognized in previous years and previous contracts. And we try to look for a solution. Now, I know that teachers aren't in it for the money. But money is important. You have to live, you have to raise a family, you have to do many things. But they're in it for the love. They're in it for the purpose in their life. I come from a family of teachers. My father was a principal for a number of years and a teacher as well, so a little bit rubs off on me, but I don't have an educational background. But what we're looking at is how do we ensure the success of the school district moving forward? And there is no easy answer. We cannot just say, I mean, if we want to be competitive, if we want to be at average, and when we're talking about the New Hampshire average, if you look on the sheet, we're not talking about the whole New Hampshire and just saying, okay, somebody 100 miles north is comparable to us. We're looking at our immediate neighbors, 6 or 7 districts next to us. The neighbors who are our market, the ones who, when a teacher comes in, if they have no particular tie to Pelham, they will go where the opportunities are best and sometimes where the money is best. So the differences for a new teacher coming in, not new to us, an experienced teacher of 5, 6, 7 years, they come in and they say, okay, I'm going to get 5,000 less at Pelham than I will at our neighbor. What will I choose? So there's a lot of different factors, but money is one of those factors. We try to collect retention data, and retention data is showing that for some teachers, it is a matter of finances, and sometimes they have to leave regardless of whether they enjoy the district. So we try to look at that and we try to say, where is it that we want to, how can we improve this? How can we address these issues? This contract is not supposed to be an end-all to the thing. And it was never intended to be in that sense, because we recognize that things can change over a number of years. We don't know what the situation is moving forward. The comparisons we gave are comparisons that we know from the CBAs of the other districts. We did not try to project what they're going to do in the next CBA. We said, this is what we know right now, this is what's happening, this is comparison. We can imagine that they're going to keep on in their track, and we can imagine that maybe our track might not reach there. But the reality is we're trying to address an issue, which is maintaining and improving the delivery of education in Pelham. And this is what the board has looked at and said this is a way that we are going to try to address that. We're presenting it to the voters to decide if this is going to be the path for Pelham's educational future. It's very difficult. There's lots of different decisions, and I know that some people have other choices that they might make in the negotiations, but it is negotiations. It wasn't just we can decide what we're going to do. We have to arrive at a negotiation, and we have to see whether this is going to work. And we're talking to you now, asking you to consider this in the warrant article. Now, a few people said thank you to me, and I appreciate that. The reason is I'm not running again, but I want to say that this agreement here is a result of the full school board, as well as the SAU and the administrative staff that helped in it, as well as the negotiators on the other side. This is a team effort. This is what we're coming forth to you, and this is what we're asking you to consider when you vote on March 12th, is it?
Yep.
On March 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to Article 2 before we move on? Dave?
I just want to make a motion to restrict reconsideration on Articles 1 and 2.
I'll accept the motion to restrict reconsideration on Articles 1 and 2. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have restricted reconsideration on Articles 1 and 2. Article 3.